Welcome to Those Guys Sports. It is your boy Mike, and I am having the pleasure of talking to Amit Mann, a podcaster, a writer, an editor. He does it all, and he's talked to me multiple times. I don't know why he wastes his time talking to me, but I'm very thankful for it. Amit, how are you?
Doing well, man. And you don't got to put yourself down like that. I have a
Uh,
right to
it,
talk
it's
to you.
just
You have a right to talk to me. It's all good.
it's more like I love talking Raptors. So every time a Raptors media person speaks to me, I'm like, man, this is great. This is awesome. I like this. I'm glad that I can talk Raptors. It's hard. You probably have people in your life that you talk Raptors with, and then when you're talking to Raptors with them, they're just like, we should trade for Shaquille O'Neal. We should trade for Joel Embiid, and you're like, only if you knew the cap ramifications or the
Yeah.
pick swap, like only if you just knew those things. So I love talking to Raptor people because they know about the trades, they know what's really going on. So it's really fun to see.
Yeah. And I got you. I get what you're saying.
So I first want to talk about this Raptors team. You know,
Yeah.
um, I'm in love with this team. I'm in love with them. Like I love this team. I'm I don't want to trade anyone. Last night against the Clippers, they fought hard without Pascal Siakam. They fought the whole game, and against the Lakers, we all saw the game. We were all frustrated with the calls, especially with Ben Taylor. We all had that Fred VanVleet moment at home, so I think we're all pretty mad. But how are you feeling about this Toronto Raptors team?
Yeah, I think it just makes more sense than it did probably beforehand, before the major trade was done. Even something like losing Jakob Poeltl and the fact that they're able to find their way to defend as a team and deal with some of the big bodies that they dealt with. Now, obviously, AD had a field day at the same time. They were able to play some team defense, and that is reminiscent of what we saw under the Nick Nurse system when Kyle Lowry was here, where they just found ways to get it done, and they did it together with team chemistry. Everyone's on a string defensively, and they were hustling. They were playing harder than the other team that they were against, and those kinds of characteristics are familiar to us. And it felt like we had kind of lost that, but if last night was any indication, it seems like they're kind of finding that identity again, and that identity alone is going to help you win a lot of games, especially during the regular season. So it's a lot more fun for sure.
I think the fun starts with the guy that I have in the picture behind me, Emmanuel Quickly. We're seeing our future point guard. You can see from that open gym. I believe that was Masai talking to him. I don't think it's talking to RJ when he said that you're gonna be the one that with Scottie Barnes is gonna lead this team. What has impressed you with Emmanuel Quickly?
Probably his playmaking, actually. That's definitely stood out. I mean, we knew how fast he was, how that the quick twitch, being able to take guys off the dribble, the pull up 3-point shooting, all very important. Also, his rotations defensively, whether it's being the low man or just offering gap help, whatever the case is. We knew that he was coming into Toronto doing that, especially coming from Tom Thibodeau. But the playmaking was something that he had actually mentioned when he was introduced as a Raptor, that he wanted to show off. And the court sense, he has it, but he's still kind of finding his rhythm with it and the timing of everything, especially within the pick and roll. Like, he was throwing some traps by the Clippers last night, and he struggled with it. And we've seen him struggle with it a couple times now, but he's going to learn from it, and he's going to keep on getting better at it. And being able to make those moves, those having his instincts just like a half second faster, is going to be the difference between being able to make that pocket pass or making that pass when he is trapped. And he's going to learn out of it, but at the same time, like, he is making some decent reads. So that's been probably one of the things that have stood out more so than anything. I see that his usage, or his assist percentage is 27% with the
Mhm.
Raptors, and with the Knicks it was 15.1. And now different roles. He's a starting point guard. When he was starting with the Knicks, when Jalen Brunson was out, or last season, his assist numbers did go up, but 6.2, 18 points per game with the Raptors so far. It's a good number.
Now I think when we look at Emmanuel Quickly, we're all thinking to ourselves like, okay, this is Tyrese Maxey because it's the same kind of it's the Kentucky guys. Like we're all thinking
Yeah.
Tyler Hero, Tyrese Maxey, Monk, what's his name from the Kings? Fox, Darian Fox. We
Yep.
all kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
have
Yeah.
that same trajectory. Do you see quickly? I don't think this year. I think maybe next year. Do you see that Tyrese Maxey type leap, or do you see that he'll get in his own lane, but maybe you won't reach the Tyrese Maxey, but probably pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, it could happen. Like even just seeing like a full season of him, is probably going to help his numbers a lot. I mean, like
Mm,
now with how things are with the Raptors currently, I don't think their entire roster is fleshed out, which I'm sure we're going to get to in a second. But it's about finding ideal pieces for what you want to run with your system. And RJ and Emmanuel are natural fits for Darko's system, but it can probably get a little bit better too at the same time. And so you factor that in, his numbers are going to just organically go up with the Raptors. Now the Tyrese Maxey leap, it's just going to be reps, and I don't see any reason why he can't get to the similar kind of trajectory. At the same time, you see how Tyrese plays when Joel Embiid is not on the floor. It's very different, right? Responsibilities are very different, and having Joel Embiid, that big body, an MVP candidate, one of the best offensive players in the league, that does take a lot of attention away from Maxi, and he's able to cook in that respect. So, the leap it's an interesting kind of thing to dynamic to think about, but he's going to continue to get better. I'll put it that way. It's hard to put like a ceiling on where it's going to be, at the end of the day, or what it looks like at the end of next season, not even this season, but he's going to continue to get better. And like just his reads improving are going to help his passing. And then at the same time, it's going to help his scoring too.
So, a guy you just mentioned, RJ Barrett, who came, of course, with Emmanuel quickly on this trade.
Yeah.
So, New York fans, if you ask them, they're going to be like, okay, this is RJ Barrett. He'll give you a good month, but then he'll give you a really bad month and a good month. He's up and
Mhm.
down. Do you see this being just one of the ups and then we'll see a down soon? Or do you see
Mm.
this being the way he can play for the Toronto Raptors going forward?
Well, I mean, the few numbers just to look at it, and granted, these are before the Clipper game last night, but his
Yeah.
rim field goal percentage was 73 with the Raptors, and with the Knicks is 57. His short mid range percentages 55% with the Raptors, 38 with the Knicks. And it's like little things like this that you start thinking, okay, so what's the difference here? And I think it's also just the Raptors system. Like the Knicks have a system where it's Jalen Brunson, it's
Yeah.
Julius Randle. They find their edges, and then it's kick out, pass, 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 and he has to work off of that. I don't have the numbers, privy to me, but I'd be interested to see like what the cut per game percentages are for RJ with the Raptors versus with the Knicks, because it feels like he's cutting a little bit more, and that's a great way for him to get easy buckets. And within this Raptor system, I keep on talking about it. Cutting is going to be beneficial to any player if you're willing to do it, and if you're willing to do it on time. Like there was a case last night. The Clippers go zone, and Scottie told RJ he's on the wing, just cut into that 2-3 zone. He did it, and he got a layup out of it. This is not the first time we've seen that. We've seen it many times. Their chemistry has been pretty good, and I think this is probably more closer to what RJ is when he's in a system that makes sense for him. Going into last night's game, he was at 21 points, 58% from the field, 50% from three, 7 rebounds, 3.4 assists. Now, the field goal percentage and 3-point percentage probably a little higher than we
It's
to
not gonna
expect
be
going forward. But I don't see why he can't get 7 rebounds per game, like because that's up to him how many rebounds he
right.
gets. He's been great on the defensive glass. 3.4 assists. That's just him making good reads when he is driving in the lane, transition, finding the open man, and his turnovers per game, it's a little higher than you'd probably like, but also he's still learning some of these reps, and you want to believe that it's gonna get better. Now, from a Knicks perspective, like I can't speak for the whole entire fan base, from the tea leaves that I've seen, they felt like it probably wasn't getting better, but also he's only been under one coach, I believe, for his entire NBA career. So
Yeah. So
that's
definitely.
also something, yeah, that's also something to think about. He's in the same system. If you have a different system under a different coach that complements your skills better, it might turn out better. It doesn't mean that he's all of a sudden made a bigger jump. He's just in a system that is better for him. That is something to keep in mind. And if you're asking RJ to, hey, attack a attack a rotating defense and run in transition and hit open threes, and just find the open man when you're driving, like these are things that he can do because he's shown that he can do that. And especially with the Raptors now, he's probably looked at as like the fourth player when they're healthy that teams are scouting for,
Right.
right? Pascal Siakam isn't there. If Emmanuel quickly isn't there, for injury or whatever case, and then he's gonna have more touches, and then we might see some of the things that Knicks fans were talking about. So part of the maturation process, definitely think he's in a system that is advantageous for his skill set, and we just see where it goes.
As you mentioned about the assist, if you see team assists throughout the league, Toronto's top five in assists,
Mhm.
and New York is bottom five. And like
There you
you
go.
said, Julius Randle is and I think some people may call it this way too, but the John Wall assist, where the person's just holding the ball for the whole like 20 seconds, and then they create a disadvantage, and then they pass it to a guy for an open
Yeah.
three or a layup. So I just think that that's what New York played a lot, and I agree. I think RJ, as long as he's like that fourth option, he's gonna be a really solid
Mhm.
fourth option. The one thing I do want to see him do a little bit better is play defense. I think for this team to kind of get to that next level, as much as we all, and I'll ask you about Scottie's defensive role. I kind of feel like I want RJ to be that guy. I want him to almost step in to say like, okay, I'll guard Jason Tatum today. I don't, not Scottie. I'll guard the
Mhm.
best player on the opposite team. But where do you see even Scottie's defensive role? Do you see it him guarding the best player, or do you feel like maybe we can move things around where it's more someone else? Because Scotty's a better roamer than a one-on-one defender.
Yeah, sure. It's a tricky one because he's shown that he's capable of, guarding certain player types in isolation and being effective at it. I think of like a DeMar DeRozan. He's had
Right.
moments against some of those players that are maybe a little bit more methodical with their approach on offense. But if someone's like a really quick, someone that has a lot of north-south speed, then he struggles a little bit more. And ideally, yeah, you don't want probably Scottie being that player because you want him doing the other things that he's so good at defensively. Like he's kind of a mixed bag on both ends, but when he's protecting the rim, when he's offering altering shots around the rim, when he's just being like an off-ball defender, like that is probably where he's best suited. And if he's in the post and he's able to handle some of the bigger bodies on switches, like that is a good thing for the Raptors defense. Now, RJ Barrett, I see where you're coming from. I don't know if he's that kind of player. I'd have to probably see uh, more, more cases of him being that kind of player and trying to guard some of those players. I don't know. It's hard for me to say that he's going to be that guy. However, I mean, I'm not going to put a ceiling on him. Like he's still very young, so there's time. And if he's willing to put in the work and to scout and to do the things that OG Anunoby used to do when he was with the Raptors, and that was, he was studying film and he was watching film and he was looking at instincts of players and he was doing all these little things that help you guard your opposition. If he's willing to do that, then sure, he can be that guy. But yeah, it's going to take a lot more reps. And to your point, I would like to see Scottie being in a different defensive role because you also have to keep in mind that, I mean, he is an energizer bunny, but um, doing all those things on the defensive end, it is taxing on your offensive game. And it's going to be a fine balance. He's still very young, obviously, but you have to think about these things as you think about, what you want Scottie to be offensively. What's his role going to be? Quickly's here, so he's not going to be the point guard, but he's going to be, something of a point forward sometimes. And if you want him to be your second option or whatever it is, do you also want him handling those reps on the defensive end? Because typically you don't have players that are doing it on both ends. You usually
Right.
have some sort of other defensive stopper that you're alluding to. And I don't know if it's RJ Barrett, to be fair. It might be started for the rest of the season, but going forward in the future, I'm not sure if he's that guy.
Right. And I think it's more like I think it's wishful thinking that we would get someone with sometimes his downhill approach with the RJ Barrett who can also have OG's defense, but we can't have it all, right? We almost have
No.
to like pick it, right?
Yeah.
OG was better corner three, and
Mm,
he didn't attack as well as RJ or get to the line as
sure.
RJ. So I think that's the biggest difference. Well, with Scotty Barnes, right?
Mhm.
Maybe I have just never noticed it on other teams, or but the way this team has said out loud, Scotty's our guy. Scotty's number one. We're building around Scotty. Messiah said it multiple times. I've heard Dennis Schroeder say it multiple times that we're building around Scotty, which also makes me. I feel like I have another rant in me to think that like if that was the message last year, I can see why Nick Nurse and Fred VanVleet and even Pascal were a little bit like, we just want a title. Why are we building on a 20
Mhm.
slash 21-year-old who just won rookie of the year? I can kind of see now the tension if that was the case. But you're hearing it so much more, and I feel like I never really heard someone say we're building around a 21-year-old the way that I'm hearing it now. Is this something that, like, you've seen other teams do? Because I know we talk about like Zion or
Mm,
Anthony Edwards, but I feel like I never heard them talk like okay, we're building around him and we're gonna do whatever is gonna make this guy the best player we can make him.
yeah. I mean, there have been cases like it depends on how special the player is,
Right,
and and the team decides that they're going to make that call, that they're going to build around player X because they believe and they see the vision with him being like the number one option and potentially leading them to a championship down the lane.
right,
When the Raptors decided to go like Vision 6-9, I still recall Masai. I think it was during a end of season after they lost to the 76ers, and he was discussing how you come up with a vision and how you pursue a vision. And he said that when the Warriors found their system, like they did it and they took a chance, and I'm paraphrasing, but they took a chance and they pursued it, and so they found the pieces around to complete that vision. And the Raptors did the exact same thing. It didn't work. That's why they've made these trades with for RJ Barrett and Manning quickly, is because they realized Vision 6-9, like it wasn't in the cards. It wasn't able something that was going to be sustainable, because the skill deficiency that they experience when they're facing other teams, it became too much. And then there's like a whole screen navigation thing and yada yada yada. So my point being is that this is probably their new vision, right? They're going to build around Scottie. Is he that guy? We're going to find out, right?
yeah.
These are the chances you take. But RJ Barrett, quickly, like they both fit really well around Scottie. And I don't think that was a bad idea to make that decision. Like OG also fits around Scottie too, but now you just found two players versus one, right? Let's take a look at the numbers, right? You got two players that fit again besides Scottie versus one player that fit very well besides Scottie. So I think it was a wise decision, and you have to keep on building out the roster. Is Jakob Pertl and Pascal Siakam the guys that you want around Scottie in that starting lineup? Do you see Gary Trent Jr. being a better fit at shooting guard? Also, at the same time, RJ Barrett, there have been rumblings around him being probably better at the shooting guard position versus small forward. So we just keep on trying to find ways to, maybe a defensive stopper, right? You just mentioned that, right? Maybe some guy 3-and-D, your prototypical 3-and-D, maybe that's the next thing that they try and go for. I'm saying all this because I do think that, they probably do want to trade Pascal Siakam. I think they prefer that they kind of stripped the previous iteration of the Raptors and moved into a different direction. But also we have to see what happens, because it's not in an easy position to trade Pascal Siakam, considering all the all the all the things that another team has to think about. He's a free agent at the end of the year. He wants his 4-year deal. He can't get that until July. Obviously, the Raptors seem like they want to trade him at the end of last season or during the offseason. And that also informs, what the Raptors are going to be going into next season too. If you re-sign Pascal because they can't find a better suitor, or they're not finding the value is fair in return, then okay, are you looking at Jakob Pertl, right? You got to keep on just going down the line in order to find the best team that fits around Scottie Barnes, and that's like the ultimate goal.
It is the ultimate goal to build around Scottie, and it makes sense, right? That's why I'm like, oh, I can, like I said, I can see why potentially there was potential. The rumors were, of course, there was the tension between the young guys and the old, and I think it honestly stems from Masai and Bobby, that they had a vision. We're building around this young kid, and we're all gonna fit into it, or you're not gonna fit into it. Like the LeBron James quote, you're gonna be with us or not. And I
Yeah.
feel like Masai was pretty honest about that. You did
They
mention,
believe they believe they could win and develop at the same time. And
right,
as look at the Warriors right now, they're having the same problems where Jonathan Kaminga, Moses Moody, they want more minutes, they want more touches. Andrew Wiggins, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green's gonna be back soon. Steph Curry. That's like your previous, like those guys
right,
won championships, and now you have your your next core of players who are also wanting more time, and deservedly so, right? So it's a hard thing to do. You need
yeah.
a collection of players that are pursuing the same thing, and that's probably why Pascal Siakam may be the odd one out in this case. If we're looking at RJ, Scottie, and Emmanuel quickly, a lot of young players still haven't got their big payday yet. Oh, well, I guess RJ has. And Scott or Emmanuel will have his this upcoming season. But anyways, you want players all pursuing the same thing.
So I think you ripped the band-aid already, but you're gonna have to rip it more for me, I guess. With Pascal Siakam, I truly think I'm like number one Pascal Siakam fan. I just love his game. Of course,
Yeah.
it's funny he didn't shoot the three well in October and in November, but then December on, he's been shooting it pretty well. About 37%, I think last I checked. And
Hmm.
he's just to me a really good player who we all know now that he can play with Scottie, but it makes sense that we would potentially trade him. But I don't want to trade him. I'm not gonna lie. I don't want to trade him.
Hmm.
Probably it's just a fan in me. Probably it's
No,
just
but there's a legit side to saying that you don't trade him if you want to win games. And you look at
right.
like last night, right? The game's up and down, things are flowing, things are good. What about when you get into the half court? Then it gets like into the nitty gritty of fourth quarter, 2 minutes left, and you can't tell me that Pascal Siakam doesn't help in those situations. He's had his moments where maybe he hasn't been as productive as we'd like him to be, but he's been pretty good so far this season. Like look at that Laker game. He's a big part of why they're able to score in the half court down the stretch there. And it's not the first time that's happened either this season. So he's also growing, I think, in those situations. And you're going to want someone to help you win games when the games get into the nitty gritty and it gets kind of dirty. But then also maybe you're like, hey, but we want these other guys to learn how to win in those situations too. Pick a side
It's
kind of thing,
hard.
right?
It's hard, and like you said, like it's the reps, right? They want people like Scottie and Emmanuel quickly and RJ Barrett to get the reps, and Pascal somewhat has the reps already, so that's why he can kind of play in those fourth quarters when it's crunch time. We all can say that he scored the winning basket for the NBA Finals. Like it was
Mm,
Pascal was there a lot of times, and the one thing I think is like I just disagree with it completely. One of the reasons why some people are saying you don't sign to an extension is because of Pascal's age. I don't. What's it? Kyle Lowry literally signed, and he's probably potentially a different player, but he's also a guard. Normally, guards don't age well,
mm,
and Kyle got an extension from Miami Heat at the age of 33. Like
mm.
we shouldn't really worry about that. I think signing Pascal to 4-year contract, even a 5-year max, I don't think it's going to hurt the team as much. I believe it's way more tradable, and the assets you can get are way better next year than you can get now. Because I'll tell you now, I do not want Kaminga at all. I'm
No?
not sure. The reason why I don't want Kaminga as well is okay. So now, and I think this OG trade kind of hurt everything. Is you got Emmanuel quickly and RJ Barrett who are going to want touches. You have Scottie
Mm,
Barnes who also wants touches. If you were to bring a Kaminga, Kaminga wants to be the guy. I think we can kind of see it in the way he plays. He wants even Golden State to be like, hey guys, I'm the guy. Forget Andrew Wiggins. Yes, we have Steph Curry. It should go Steph, me,
mhm.
everybody else. So if Kaminga comes here, where is he in the pecking order? Is he number
Yeah.
two? Is he number three? So I just don't think someone like Kaminga helps this team as a whole. So
Mm,
in my mind, is if you trade Pascal, I kind of like the assets more, or you get a lot of young guys. Like I'm for getting Moody, Pons. I forgot their young center, Trey Jackson Jr. is his name. No, Jackson Davis, and
mm,
then maybe a pick or two. Like I'm okay with that if because Pascal's worth way more, but I just think if we're building around Scottie quickly and Barrett, you need more additional assets. You don't need that number one. I want to be number one option guy. I just don't see it there. And I also think Pascal's gonna age well. I'm one of those once again. I can see where I'm gonna stand on it. Um, I just don't. I think in year three of Pascal, he is smart enough to go like, I'm gonna be the Aaron Gordon of this team. I believe his defense won't. His defense hasn't been great, but his defense can get better, and I can see it being Scottie's team with Quickly and Barrett scoring most of the load, and then Pascal doing the dirty work. That's what he did in the beginning of his career. I don't see why we don't see that being at the latter of his career.
yeah, I got you. But do you want to pay someone that kind of money to do that role? Eh? You got to think about that.
Yeah, because eventually you got to pay Scottie, and then of course Emmanuel quickly is going to get his. He's probably going to get a 4-year, probably $100+ million contract. He's still got RJ, and then you also have a Jakob Poeltl, who that's the guy, like not maybe not this year, but I would call OKC. That's just a random thought I have. Like OKC needs a big, and
Hmm.
eventually they're gonna want to start winning for a title. They're winning now,
A
but wanting to
backup
go for
big.
a title. Do you think they have a starting center big?
I mean, I mean, they got to decide on this, but like Chet Holmgren is there, and their defensive style is like, everyone's kind of locked in on the matchups, and
Right.
it's a conversation, right? Is he going to be a power forward or is he going to be a center? But I think he is playing center, no?
Yeah, he's playing center now. I'm just thinking he's so skinny. So I'm thinking it'd be nice if they had like a Jakob Poeltl to be a good defender on the back end and
Mm.
something that can that OKC can have. But I get it because this ideal team, and we said it last year, the ideal person is Miles Turner. Like Miles Turner was the ideal guy for this Raptors team even last year, but they
Yep.
have Jakob Poeltl. Even though we're seeing Jakob Poeltl, it sucks that he got hurt. He was playing a lot better the past couple of games. Him having that Manuel quickly there, being able, I think sometimes OG was such a great defender, but people got lazy because OG's such a great defender. They're like,
Mm.
oh, OG got it. We don't have to worry about the middle because OG. But I think now that Pirtle knows he's more needed, I think he's been a better defensive player. But even going back to what you asked, like about the paying Pascal, I'm a stan. I would pay him. I would hope he would want to take a little bit of a discount, or the contract would be more money this year and then descends the latter years. But you hear all the reports. He wants his max. He definitely wants his max, and you know,
Wants his max or he wants a 4-year contract, right? It's two kind
yeah,
of different things. 4 years of security with your contract versus, taking a 2-year deal and having to renegotiate. Like, there's obviously more guaranteed money probably in a 4-year deal, and maybe that's what he's looking for. And deservedly so. He does deserve a 4-year deal. And, if he gets traded now, as I mentioned earlier, he's only eligible for a 2-year deal. And this is like part of the things that are in the new cap because they want to incentivize teams and players to stay with their current teams to
right.
avoid, stars getting together and doing all those fancy things. Yeah, I mean, I've kind of outlined it already. Like they have to make a decision on what they want to do with Pascal. For any team on the outskirts, looking at the Raptors, it's hard to make a real sell on why you would trade for Pascal when he's not a guarantee to re-sign with you, and the Raptors are asking for a certain level of premium assets in return, right? And it seems like a lot of that is just young players that they can also add into their current young core of Quickly, Barrett, and Scottie Barnes, if that's the way they want to go. Yeah, I don't know. And also, we should keep in mind too that if they do re-sign Pascal, like they can always trade him right later on.
Nice.
You finish the season or whatever I'm not sure when it's like 6 months or something like that. You can't trade a
Yeah,
player. I'm not sure what the number is, but anyways, after that, you can make a trade. You could do that. It would probably clear up some things with Pascal's future and probably just help stabilize the team. Like it's always kind of an antsy time at this time of year. You're only a few weeks away from the trade deadline. A lot of people are probably looking over their shoulders. I don't see any reason why, like Chris Boucher, some of the vets, Pascal Siakam, you're just like, are we going to be here in a month and a half? You're
right.
you're asking yourself these questions. So it is kind of that time of the year where it gets a little bit difficult, but yeah, they gotta work through it.
It's weird because like I agree. I think you would get more if you just re-signed him and traded him next year. Because you're right. Like if I'm a NBA GM and not all of
Hmm.
them are the greatest NBA GMs, but I'm not trading if I'm Indiana, Jarvis Walker or Matherin or Nemhard for a guy that like is not promised to stay. I would never trade Keegan Murray for Pascal Siakam if he's not willing to stay. Like
Yeah.
the risk of trading for Pascal just doesn't make sense. Now the more I think about it, the only team I can see taking that risk, one is Detroit. I can see Detroit just. I made a prediction I do a podcast with my friend, and I made a prediction that Detroit's going to be bad, but they're going to make a pick. They're going to make a trade for someone
Mm.
because they want to be good next year. Like you can kind of tell with the way they're
They
moving.
wanted to be good this year.
Oh man, and the crazy thing is, I'm not sure
Yeah.
if it still aligns. If they lose 28 games again, it's against the Raptors again, which is like ridiculous because I
Yeah,
don't
in
want this
March.
pressure anymore.
In March, yeah.
I
Think
don't want
think
this
Cade's out
pressure.
right now. Cade's out for another week or so, week and a half. Yeah, it's a weird one, man. It's a weird
Yeah,
one.
and like they've just been really bad. I almost hope that they get the number one pick because you just can't be this bad and get number two or three. Like
I
somebody
know.
help this team. But yeah, like there's no for Pascal, the only team I can see actually making the trade, especially, I was gonna bring them up later on when we talk about NBA, but we can kind of mention them now. The Warriors again. If they're just like, Steph is too crucial to us, he's too good. Putting a Pascal with a Steph Curry, which would actually be an amazing duo for the
Hmm.
time being, would like that's the trade I would make if I'm the Warriors. Like if because you have a and they don't plan on trading Clay. They're willing to go in the luxury tax. They don't care about that stuff. They have a Draymond, and if Pascal's going to shoot 35% to 38% shooting the three, especially the corner threes, which he's like, I believe in both corners now, he's like 40%.
Mm,
Why not? Why wouldn't you take that risk?
yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at, I was looking at Steph Curry. I searched him on Twitter just to see what the latest was because he had that quote last night, right? And then
Yeah,
I did stumble upon this from Shams, who like a half hour ago said the mindset in Golden State right now is everyone but Steph Curry is on the table. They're going to be looking to make moves.
even Clay
So
Thompson,
I'm just going off the quote.
because
So,
like I would I would love a Clay Thompson. In my brain, I've always said Clay Thompson, his contract's so much money, but like I always think, imagine if we could trade Gary and maybe
mm,
somebody else. Like it's maybe Gary and Thad would probably get us closer to Clay's number, but I don't think it reaches Clay's number yet. Clay's number is pretty big from what I know. But imagine if Clay Thompson was on this team, right? I imagine if we had that additional shooter on this team. Um,
yeah, but then okay, so we'll go back to your original one of the original things you said is like that Scottie has to be your defensive stopper then because you have
yeah,
RJ
that's
Barrett,
true.
you have Klay Thompson. Klay isn't the same player, unfortunately, he used to be after all these surgeries.
Yeah,
He's not even close to that being that guy. He used to be something of a defensive stopper, but you can't rely on that anymore. RJ Barrett, we've talked about him, so now Scottie is that person.
right.
Um, right? So you got to think about that, and where if you're taking on that contract, obviously you want to win games, and you're going to run into a problem at some point where you have no one that you're leaking, right?
Right.
The floodgates open and you're just giving up points everywhere. Sure, you're going to score, but you're going to have a lot of problems stopping teams from putting the ball in net. That's another thing you got to think about.
And then another thing that like we may not want Scotty to be the number one defender on a person, but you got to think about it. Giannis was like the defensive player of the year. Yeah, people were arguing why Giannis wasn't guarding Jimmy Butler during that playoff series. So I think it's okay. Mind you, of course, he had Brooke Lopez and Chris Middleton was a pretty good defender at the time. So I think he also had guys around him, Drew Holiday, but Giannis still guards like the best wing. I would just want Scotty to probably guard more wings than guards. I
Mhm.
think sometimes, especially when it's a really quick guard, I wouldn't want all that. Now, to put a bow in the whole Pascal Siakam, if you're Masai or Bobby, whoever makes that decision, are you doing it? Are you trading Pascal? Are you really trying to figure out if the deal, of course, the deal has to match, but if someone provides you,
Mm.
if Golden State calls you, what are you even asking for? Would you take that deal?
Mm. Yeah, what's the deal? I mean, I have to do some googling here to
I
figure
think
it
it would
out.
have
But
to be it would
yeah,
have to
go
be
ahead.
either Wiggins because if you have Chris Paul, like if you're giving me Chris Paul, I need like three of your young guys. Give me Wiggins, maybe I could take two and maybe two draft picks or something. But let's say it's Wiggins or Chris Paul because that's the contracts that match, and then either Moody, Trey Jackson Davis, Pons, or Kaminga.
Mm. Yeah, I can't even see. I have trouble seeing the Raptors taking on the salary of a Chris Paul. Like they don't really do deals like that. Like even when they did the Kawhi deal, right? They got Danny Green, but I mean Danny Green was pretty good for the Raptors when he was here
Right,
for that one
right,
season, right?
right.
So they'd want the player to be someone that isn't going to take away from their current core. So more than anything, like I could see them throwing in, some other, I'm not sure who it is, like a Dario Saric, right? I could see the Raptors being more interested in going that angle than someone like a Chris Paul who is going to demand he's going to demand just because of how good he is still usage reps time and all that kind of stuff is this kind of it kind of messes with what you're trying to do with your current core of players. Andrew Wiggins, yeah, I could see that more so than Chris Paul for sure. What's the deal? Yeah, I mean, like Moses Moody's interesting. Kuminga, to what you were saying earlier, if he is like, if he's not going to be willing to work into this current system, which is all about, off ball movement, cutting, being unselfish, then he's not really a fit. And the Raptors have to think about that, right? That's why I thought maybe a Moses Moody might make more sense because of his current role and some of the things that I've seen from his game. So, but the deal itself, I mean, yeah, it's I don't know, Wiggins. You probably want to interested in pods. Moses Moody, like I don't know, Gary Payton. Like this, you got to look at players like that who are going to fit into your system. And I don't really know what the fit is. To be honest, I'm not sure if the Raptors are really interested in taking on that kind of salary. When they could just like re-sign Pascal and kick this thing down the road a little bit and decide on it later on. They could also do that, but it does feel like they aren't going to lose a trade, right? They don't want to lose a trade,
Right,
and they're not just
right,
going to give up Pascal Siakam for nothing.
right.
Even though through everything we've just outlined that they're not in the position to really win a trade necessarily, right? They're going to need some help. They're going to need some help from the
Yeah,
from a team, and that's why I think it's seeming more and more likely that they're just going to re-sign him. And I hope, like I had tweeted a little while ago about, I hope the Raptors just, trade Pascal and get this over with because it doesn't feel like things are fair in a sense that they're treating someone that's been so good at the franchise like this. And there's the reports from Michael Grange or Josh Lindbergh, I believe, that, Pascal and the front office didn't really talk much during the offseason, right? And his camp felt that was a bit strange, which led them to believe that a trade was imminent in some capacity. These are things that you should be like. Messiah's tried to do good business by a lot of different players. That's why he didn't trade Fred VanVleet apparently at the deadline. It could be a bit of two things. Like you don't want to trade someone who's been so good to the franchise for to be a rental, or
yeah,
and also maybe he didn't feel like the value was fair for Fred. But we're also going into a very similar situation, right? So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. I hope, in saying all that, I hope we don't get into a case where we're losing Pascal Siakam for nothing, right? Like that's why it feels like, and I don't think the Masai and Bobby want to do that again either. I remember when he was on the podium and he said that if people feel like we lost him for nothing, then I'm willing to eat that because essentially we didn't want to do that to Fred. Well, here you are again with Pascal. You could just re-sign him at a reasonable cost. If he wants to stay in Toronto, that much, then maybe he's willing to take a bit of a discount or whatever, and you're able to get a deal that makes sense, and then you can just decide on this later on. I think that seemingly it's like the most likely outcome as we go forward. But again, like when the OG and OG trade happened, I was just sitting on my couch and I got a notification. We have no idea when it's going to happen, and it was like 2 weeks in the making too. So
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's all I think, like you said, right? To even put it, like I said, put a bow on like the Pascal thing. Of course, it can make sense to trade him, but it doesn't make sense now to trade him anymore, just because your leverage isn't there as much. And if you want to win a trade, like Masai and Bobby want to normally do, it's hard to do like this. But you just re-sign him, and honestly, the Pacers will probably be good next year, and the Pacers are gonna evaluate their players and be like, is Nemhard a part of our future? Is Mathurin a part of our future? Is Adjust Walker? Once they realize that they're
Mm,
not, I can see them calling you again. Sacramento, if they're gonna keep itching, they're gonna call you back. Like we
mm,
just needed him to be signed for 3 years. That's all we needed was him to be signed. And once he's signed, I think your leverage is a lot more. But I agree. I feel like the relationship with Messiah and Pascal has been kind of weird for the past, I guess, a year, calendar year,
mm.
and that's what kind of changes now for the rest of the roster. Do you
Yes.
see anyone else being potentially on the trade block?
Uh, Other than Pascal,
Yeah, any Gary or there was that report that Boucher people had interested in Boucher from Boston, which would be just horrible, but
mhm.
Boucher or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, Gary's another person that you got to make a decision on, right? And you don't want to run into the same problem as I mentioned with Fred that he's off your roster and you haven't gotten anything for him. But I guess it's Gary Trent Jr. Yeah, for sure. Maybe some of the vets you could pair them together for a draft pick or something like that. Do they feel like Jalen McDaniels is a future fit with the roster? I think they're probably going to keep him because they just re-signed him and they just signed him and he's a pretty low cost player. But yeah, I guess Chris Boucher, Gary Trent Jr., Pascal, obviously, those are the ones that stick out to me. I think like Otto Porter Jr. is not going to get you a draft pick. I don't think. Those are probably the two right there that are probably most likely if a trade does happen. It would be those two, but I think Pascal is like the big piece here, and they decide on that, then everything else makes more sense.
I think with Gary, I honestly think if you were to trade him, you're not going to get too much for him, but it's almost you want to trade him to a team that can give you two low usage versions of Gary. Like you almost just have to
Mm,
like double down on it a little bit. But I was looking at the Fans Pro, the trade machine, and I had Gary going to like the Wizards for like Kispert and another like young player, like just almost trying to make your bench a little bit have a little bit more
mm,
shot heavy, more youth and things like that. And mind you, every time we talk about this team, sometimes there's a guy named Grady Dick that's just there who just got called up back, and he's gonna
hmm.
have multiple stints back and forth, but he's a part of their future. He's
Yes.
definitely a
Yeah.
part of their future. His ability to shoot that we've all seen is a part of their future as well. So I just think like if you were to trade Gary, you got to trade him for some assets.
Mm.
I'm not too sure if Chris Boucher is a first round pick, but maybe for a contending team, he's a late first rounder, like a really late first rounder, or most likely a second round pick. That's what I see for Chris Boucher, but it's hard. I think, like you
Yeah.
said, I think it's Pascal's the number one prize. He is.
Yeah.
So
And you're right. Like they just recalled Grady. I mean, I remember Bobby. I was sitting in that press room and he said that he felt like Gary or Grady was going to be instant impact, right? And he hasn't played that much at the NBA level. He started off and he played a little bit. He struggled, and I believe he just had a pretty good game with the
yeah,
905. And this isn't even like a bad thing. I'm not saying. I think it was just a little bit unwise to put those expectations at the beginning.
great,
Personally, there's nothing wrong with going to the G League and getting your reps in and learning and stuff like that. I think sometimes it's viewed as a bad thing. Like that's good for a player to get those reps. You learn by playing usually and by
great,
building your foundation and getting good skill level development. Especially at that time, and he's going to be prioritized. You see the amount of shots he's putting up there, like he's chucking them up. Okay,
great,
hopefully he's learning from that. That's what
great.
you hope. But you're right. Like they recalled him. I think they want him to play at the NBA level, and it all more informs like what's their next step going to be. If they decide that they're just going to build around these young players that they have on the roster currently, then yeah, I mean Chris Boucher, Pascal Siakam. Do they view Gary Trent Jr. in the same vein? What is Grady's position? Another thing to think about too. Is he going to be shooting guard, small forward, whatever the case is? Got to decide on that too. But yeah, we keep on talking about it, but the Raptors have to pick a side. They got to pick a
Yeah, they
side.
have to definitely pick a side. And like, um, and even I just thought of the question right now, and we're gonna talk about the Raptors bench because I'm in love with the bench right now. Like
Mhm.
Dennis is the best version of Dennis Schroeder. He may want to be a starter, but like him as a bench guy, being that aggressive offensively and defensively is just way better. But I just want to quickly talk about Gary Trent again. What does his next contract look like next season? Because his minutes have kind of gone down, his points have gone down. His We're not seeing Gary from last year, even the year before. This is probably of the worst version of Gary that we've seen with the Raptors. And mine's not horrible, but kind of the worst in comparison.
Yeah, I mean, even that, like his numbers, how different are they? Obviously, his minutes are substantially down, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, he's averaging 11 points. He's also down 7 minutes per game, but he's shooting 40% from three. His
Yep,
2 point percentage is a lot lower. So I mean, overall, you're not probably seeing the growth from the player that you would probably like. Especially as a young player. I mean, what is he like 20,
23.
24? Yeah,
Oh,
20, yeah, just turned 20, or he's turned 25, I guess, actually. Or no, 24. Yeah, he's 24. Okay.
yeah.
So what his next contract is probably very similar to what his current contract is. To be honest, I mean that's the contract that he was given at his age, and then for him, you hope that you show that you're able to be more than what your current contract is, and then you get a raise. But if
Right.
that hasn't happened, then your deal may be very similar to the previous one that you had when he opted in, surprisingly to some degree, in July. It was because, his previous season didn't go very well, and
Right.
probably his agent, his camp, they looked at the market and they realized that they're better off opting in to give this another shot next offseason. And the way things have gone right now, there's still time. And also, I mean, if Pascal Siakam is traded, what if Gary Trent Jr. is the one heading into the starting lineup, right?
Right.
Obviously now his numbers are going to look a lot better just organically, right? He's going to get more
Right.
reps, all that kind of stuff. He's going to be playing with the other starters, so that's going to help him. He has great chemistry with Scottie Barnes. These are like the politics of contract negotiations, and what we're talking about, like he would need some kind of change within his role for his contract to look dramatically different. But at this point, it's probably going to be pretty similar.
And the thing is, once again, if you do a Pascal trade, you may be getting someone who may want to start. If you let's say get a Kaminga, but then once again that puts Gary back on the bench, and
Mm-hmm.
Gary's young, right? Do you want Gary to be your starting shooting guard of the future? Do you want him to be your next Jordan Clarkson? Like once again, you have to pick a side. But I love this bench. Like this bench is so much more fun. We're deeper just by trading OG and Precious. I was never really a Precious fan. We, as Raptor fans, saw the one play that Precious hit the above the break three against the Philadelphia 76ers, and we fell in love ever since. And I just
Yeah.
think we couldn't do it. Malachi Flynn, I was a little bit of a stand because I believed more his confidence was really low. So I understand all that. But the bench is much better. Have you
Mm-hmm.
seen from the bench?
Yeah, it's a little bit better. I mean, obviously Dennis going there has kind of woken it up a little bit. Chris Boucher is performing much better with Dennis playing beside him. Again, it's just you have a point guard who knows how to play the position, who's going to play with pace, and that's going to help a lot of players perform better, especially Chris Boucher, who thrives on energy, who thrives on cutting, who thrives on playing with physicality and aggression. So it's going to help. It could help with Jalen McDaniels. It could help with Chris Boucher. It could help Grady Dick if that were to happen too. And yeah, Gary. I mean, he's making shots right now too. We should mention that. Like, I'm not. I was going to bring it up here while we were chatting, but I think he shot like 42% or something like that over the past few months from three. So yeah, he's coming in, he's just hitting buckets.
Right.
He's making a lot of the shots that he's shooting. There's been some ups and downs, but that's how it goes sometimes within within NBA seasons. So yeah, between the last 2 months, in December he shot 40%. So far this month, again early, he's shooting 47%. In November he shot 43%. Really, it was just October that was really, really bad. And maybe the early portion of November. But outside of that, he's been pretty stable. It's some of the floaters and things like that that aren't going in for him, and hopefully that can change for his sake because he needs it to. But I think just making some of the additions that they made, it's helped all lineups within the roster just make more sense in terms of a skill versatility standpoint. So now you can put RJ Barrett in, and you have some space in there, you have some cutting, and it's going to help a Chris Boucher, get into a better, comfortable level with his scoring, or find better positions to score the ball. Although Chris isn't really scoring too much right now either. But really, it's Dennis moving to the bench is what woken it up, has made it look a lot better, has provided some stability, and it's helped keep a lot of minutes down for a Pascal and for a Scottie at certain points. And he's a good player, starting caliber on some teams, but the Raptors, they within their roster construction, they probably needed someone else at the point guard position. And I mean, Emilian quickly, he's real.
Definitely real. And even included with his bench, and Raptor fans are gonna love this guy. He was Jante Porter. He was a guy that was like a top 20 draft pick. Well, projected at the time before he got injured in Missouri. He was a top 20 draft pick. People were like, "Oh, he's gonna be a really good backup in the league." And I always knew it. Like even now, he like you can see the team wants him to shoot the ball. In
Mhm.
last night's game, he had kind of an open shot. I think Dennis passed him the ball, and then he didn't shoot it. I think he decided to drive. And then when he went to the bench, he looked at his team and said, "My bad. I should have shot it." And because you can tell they're all giving him the confidence, like,
Hmm.
you're a pretty good shooter. We're calling you baby Marc Gasol. Things a little too
Yeah.
early. I do not
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
the baby Marc Gasol should be called yet. But he if it's like if he was almost better, he would be
Hmm.
the starting caliber person that we're looking for. Like if he was a better defender, I should say. He's the guy that we're looking for. The guy who can shoot probably 37 to 42% shooting
Yeah.
above the break three. Like a guy who can play tough. Not he doesn't want the ball all the time. Like he's almost like a perfect fit with the
Hmm.
Scottie, RJ, and quickly future. But of course, and he's an older vet, not vet, but older rookie. But he's one of those guys. I think he really helps this bench and way better than I think Precious did, especially offensively, I should say.
Yeah, no, for sure. I like his court awareness. His again, his instincts are really good. He plays with some tenacity. He's pretty prideful on the defensive end. It seems like he wants to do well
Yeah.
there, and
Yeah.
that's half the battle. But also, he's just able to. He knows where to be in the right spots, and his pick and roll coverage, his isolation defense, especially against bigs, it needs work, but that's okay. 24 years old, really the first NBA opportunity I believe he's gotten.
Yeah.
And he's
Consistent.
like
Yeah.
6'11", 240. He's an interesting prospect, and Darko said it after the game last night that he's an NBA caliber player, backup big for sure, and from there, I mean, you see where things go. I'm intrigued by him. I think he's a nice fit. It seems like he's willing to accept a certain kind of role within the Raptors. And yeah, if he does shoot the ball with confidence, if he stops hesitating, his numbers from three are probably going to look a lot better. But right now, he is
Right.
hesitating to what you said, and that little bit of uncertainty can be the reason why you miss a shot.
Right.
So
And I think he's hesitant because he's thinking like I don't want to piss anybody off. Like
yeah,
you
he
can
wants to do
almost
the
see it
right
in his
thing.
face. Yeah, he
Yeah,
wants to
for
do the
sure,
right thing.
for sure.
And like, you know what? That's the type of quality we all would want in an NBA player, a guy on our team. Not I'm not trying to harp on Precious, but I just think Precious shot the ball a lot. Mind you, I think we wanted to, but since I think he was unconscious sometimes shooting the ball, where like I like the thought that he's like no, like it's okay. Like I want to pass the ball. I want to make the team next year. I want to make
Yeah.
an NBA team next year. You can kind of tell that's in his that's what he wants. So
Straight up, like if he comes in and like he was, at points he was switching on to James Harden last night. If
yeah,
he comes in and he's able to do things like that, he's able to be disciplined on the defensive end. That's what his pick and roll coverages. He's following the game plan. He's not fouling a lot in isolation. He's getting his defensive boards, and he's just like making shots or willingly taking threes on offense and diving to the basket in certain situations. He's making the extra pass. Like that alone is making him a valuable NBA player, especially with the landscape of the NBA right now. The fact that he's a stretch big potentially does open up a lot of opportunities for not just him with the Raptors, but the NBA as a whole. Like he's opening eyes. He's ears are perking up with what he's shown. Because everyone's looking for like a backup big that can stretch the floor, right? Who isn't? Everyone wants that. So good for him.
exactly. So I want to move on to the next NBA teams, a bunch of NBA teams. So right now, I look at the standings every day, which I'm pretty sure every Raptor fan does, and the Chicago Bulls have been just so good, and they've been so good. They're also like sometimes can be very delusional. They wanted to build around the three guys last year, and
Mm,
I feel like that may happen again. I feel like either we all thought Zach LaVine was going to get traded. Zach LaVine also is the sneaky Warriors trade I can see happening because
yeah.
why wouldn't they say like, okay, we'll take a Kaminga. We don't really care. We have Kobe White, the next Michael Jordan, so we don't really care. And like they just been so good. Them and the Utah Jazz. They just Utah doesn't want to tank, and I honestly I'm one of the rare people. I'm actually a Utah Jazz fan. Like that's like my second favorite team. And I'm thinking to myself like trade marketing. His value is the highest now. And I hate the thought of tanking, but I'm okay with like trading marketing, get as much of a value you can, and build after that. But both teams
But
have
what
just
are
been
you
really
building
good.
around though? What are you building around?
I
with
think I'm
Utah.
hoping that we can be. I hate tanking, but I'm hoping we can be bad enough. We get a top five pick this year, which is not going to happen anymore because they're good. And then the following draft, where you have, I think, I don't think AJ is in it, but AJ Cooper Flag. I think there's a couple other young guys. If I can get a top 10 pick there, I have like my future can be set. But I get it. Like, why you're Utah, no draft, no restricted free agents coming to you. Like, no one's coming to this team. So it's
Hmm.
better if you have marketing and see if you can bring somebody back into the fold than take them out. So, but
Yeah.
both teams have been pretty good. What have you seen from Chicago and Utah?
Yeah, I mean Chicago, like they're just getting Zach LaVine back, and they had that win last night against the Rockets. Rockets are another 500 team, and I don't know, take it for what it is, but I think, Zach LaVine not being in the lineup, it has helped more of their roster make sense. And it's very similar to what the Raptors are dealing with. Just because you bring in three-star players doesn't mean that they're going to
Right.
fit well together, right? And like the fact that when they're all playing together, I still think this is the case, is that they're a net negative when the three of them
Yeah.
are on the floor. Like that can't be with those guys with the kind of money that they're being paid. And those are also signs that, maybe they don't fit so well together. Maybe Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, maybe they're just a little bit too similar, right?
Right.
Maybe Nikola Vucevic isn't the rim protector that you needed, and you got to factor these kinds of things into the equation. And then when Zach LaVine goes out, all of a sudden now DeMar is more the number one option. He's cooking. Vucevic, he's a stretch five. Kobe White gets to thrive because he's been ready for more reps and more experience and a higher usage. And then you bring in Nosumu, Patrick Williams. These are some of your stoppers, 3 and D, 2 and D, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Again, it just helps you make a roster that makes a lot more sense, and you're putting them out there, and everyone's motivated. They're excited to play. You have better skill versatility on both sides of the floor, and that's kind of what happens. And now Zach LaVine's back. Obviously, still a very good player, but I'm curious how things go going forward, because just because they I think last time was the first game where his minutes restriction was not in play.
I think like
And
36 minutes, I think.
yeah, yeah, in the nights before, there was a bit of a restriction, and also been out of the lineup. If they stay healthy, let's see how the next like 10 games go, because they were doing well when Zach wasn't there. And I'm not saying Zach was a problem, but it's helped clarify some of the roles on the roster, and that's really important for an NBA team. So yeah, I guess wait and see with the Bulls.
Yeah, like if they don't, they're kind of in some situation as the Raptors. If they don't make a trade, I'd just be shocked. Like, why not? Even Zach LaVine to the Kings would be pretty good. But Zach LaVine should also. I think it's all about roles, right? Like the
Mm,
league, it's all about role definition. Know who you are in our system. If you go to the Kings, you're our third guy. Sabonis is like has been amazing this season. His stats have shown it. His percentages have shown it. Like Benjamin Fox has been amazing. Too, that team's pretty good. If you add a Zach LaVine, you're hoping Zach can be better defensively, but
mm,
still be a guy. Some clutch moments. You're hoping Zach LaVine can step up to a lot of those moments.
mm.
With Chicago, is there any team that you can see making like some moves this trade deadline that like people aren't really noticing, or any shock team or any shock player you can see getting traded? I've heard some Donovan.
Shocking. Donovan Mitchell. Yeah,
Yeah,
because it is a free agency. Yeah, I guess his name is in there. What are the Brooklyn Nets doing? What are the Atlanta Hawks doing? There's been some rumblings around DeJounte Murray, and just like thinking about stripping it down and just kind of restarting their vision with their team. I'm just like scrolling through teams right now. On the
which
Timberwolves, they're probably going to sit tight. OKC, they're going to sit tight. Denver Nuggets, do they feel like they came into the season and they said that they want to give these young guys a chance to fill in some of the roles of the players that were doing them last season. Jeff Green's gone, and you gotta fill those roles because you need your top 8 to be set if you want to win an NBA championship. Are they sold on that? Do they want to bring in someone to insert into their seventh part of their rotation, or the eighth person, like that kind of thing? That's something you got to consider. The Clippers, they're always looking for something. They got like 15 NBA caliber players. Those are kind of the names that come to mind for me. The Grizzlies, I suppose. now that John Morant's out for the season, how does
They
that
should just tank
inform
it.
what they want their season? Yeah, how does that
They should
inform
just
what
tank
they
it.
want their season to be? Um, the Dallas Mavericks for sure. Their season has not gone according to plan, that's for sure. There have been rumblings around them with Pascal Siakam too, and I think he'd be something of a good fit there. Although I don't want him to go there because just like being around two ball dominant players like Kyrie and Luka, not that they wouldn't pass to him or he wouldn't get his touches, but it's just his role would be so different. It would be a lot of
Yeah,
just standing around essentially, and
yeah.
he's better than that. So I hope that's not the case. But the Dallas Mavericks, they're going to be looking for a lot of things, but they'll be active.
Yeah, it's. I think this trade deadline. See, we say it and then nothing happens. Like no one gets traded. It just stays super quiet. Because everyone's just so the plan has like convinced everyone that they're close. Because even like Toronto, yeah, we lost against the Clippers, who've just been on a tear recently. The Lakers, like we lost to these teams, but they've
Mhm.
all been such. I think I messaged Samson the other day, and I'm like this was like the best loss on his live pod. I messaged that this is the best loss the Raptors had against the Clippers. Like
Yeah.
you can have moral victory sometimes, but I thought it was a little bit of a moral victory. You down two of your starters, a back to back, pretty good. So when Raptor fans are looking at this, we're like, we're 15 and 23, but what stops us from going on a Utah Jazz run? Like, what's stopping
Hmm.
us? We go 9 and 3, we're 2 games below 500. We're probably the eighth seed in the East. Are we not now better than Atlanta? Are we not now better than the Nets? Like I said, Chicago's been on a run. They're just the best team in the league. I don't get it. But maybe we'll be better than them as well. So to me, like, are we not at least fighting for that eighth seed play in? So I think a lot of teams are probably feeling the same way the Raptors are. It's
Yeah.
so close.
Yeah. Like right now, there's such a big gap between the 8 and 9 seed. Like the
Mhm.
8 seeds, the Orlando Magic, they're 21 and 16, and then the 9 seed Chicago Bulls, they're 18 and 21.
Right,
It's a huge gap. The Bulls at the 9 spot are 4 games behind the Orlando Magic. That's not a huge number, but it kind of shows a tiering of the teams within the Eastern Conference. Like
right.
I think that top 8 is probably, where things stand currently, unless something were to change. So the Raptors, they would probably be looking at, that 9 or 10 spot. And if you're looking at it from that perspective, they're 2.5 games behind the Bulls for the 9 spot. Um, I think, Messiah has famously said, playing for what? I think this would be a case where you want them to get into a playoff series, and that's something to shoot for sure. That would be a great accomplishment considering how the season has gone. If they can go
Right.
on a bit of a run and find a groove. And I mean, it depends on who's on the roster, but anyways, yeah, winning games is good, and if at least you'll play in spot, awesome.
Right. And I think that's what we all really want. We just want to win games, right? Like
Yeah.
that's why I've never been really a big tank person. Or I mean, and you don't have your draft pick this year, like, and you want your draft pick to convey. Like you don't want to keep your draft pick this year because if you do, then next year it's the same scenario. Like, and then what if you trade Pascal and you don't have a good season next year? Like you rather almost just have your draft pick be
Hmm.
conveyed and you'll be much happier that way. Um, but yeah, that's really it that I want to. Anything you want to chat about in regards to the Raptors or the NBA as a whole?
No, man. I mean, we kind of touched on a lot here. I'm curious how the trade deadline goes. It's hard to project too much into what the Raptors are going to be with this Pascal Siakam thing looming. And for his sake, for the Raptors' sake, for everyone's sake, man, like let's just figure it out. That's what I'd like to see more than anything is let's just figure that out, and then you can look forward to like the expectations for the rest of the season and how games are going to go and how everyone's usage is going to be, who gets touches when, and all that kind of stuff. I just like clarity there, and that way we can just start looking forward to future games and understanding what the expectations are. I think that'd be really good, and I don't sway this way or that way with most of these things. Like Pascal Siakam being traded would be really sad, but it's also the business. And once Fred left, OG's gone now too. It's like, okay, we're definitely heading in a different direction
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
And I just hope the best for Pascal. But if they re-sign him, it helps me think, okay, so let's go for the play-in spot. Let's try and get into that top 8 somehow, some way. But if they If Pascal is traded, then I look at it very differently. Then it's like, just, give the young guys the reps, let them hustle, let them play, find an identity, find their chemistry, and let them develop, right? And it's hard to really look forward after any of these things are figured out.
Exactly. And so I'll end it off with the thought that I'm just gonna put it out in the air that after we're done talking, Woj or Shams is gonna put a post that Pascal signs a 4 year, $150 million contract. I don't know, whatever, I don't care. $100 million contract for Pascal Siakam. The Toronto had changed their mind. They want to build around these four guys, and that's our future. We're just gonna improve the bench. So that's I'm gonna put it out there
There you
and
go.
hopefully it happens. And once it happens, I message you and say like, "Hey, it happened," and you're like, "Yeah, I guess." So, and we just kind of go from there with this Raptor team. But thank you so much for joining me. I hope to have you on again. It's always a pleasure speaking to you. You've joined the pod. This is the third time joining the pod. I always appreciate people talking to me, and I just want to say thank you. Amit for those guys sports. It's your boy Mike. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment below, and we'll talk again. Peace.